Hello and welcome to Metra AV Tech Tips. I'm Brent.
I'm Adam.
And we're not here this week.
We're not.
We are a figment of your imagination.
That's right. So this is just a little introduction to let you all know what's going on. Now, of course, come back and see us next week where we will be live again.
Both of us?
Both of us will be
Same
live.
place, same time?
Yep, exactly. And also come back, actually stick around for this episode. This is one of our top videos that we have. This is an HDBaseT best practices episode. It's actually kind of an older one. You'll see the video quality has changed quite a bit between this one and that one.
But still
you can see
quite a bit
on.
of good information in it.
Yeah, really good information. Also, if you are at Infocom, come see us there at Infocom. You can find us on any of the maps that are going to be there for that. Do you have the booth that we're going to be at there, Brent?
I do.
Booth 3629. So definitely come and check us out at booth 3629 at Infocom if you are in the area. I'll be there. Brent will not be there.
I'll be in Los Angeles in Los Feliz area, so reach out and call me.
Yeah, exactly. So with that, everybody, stay tuned. Grab some popcorn.
Enjoy the show.
Episode. Enjoy the show. And we'll see y'all next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Tech Tips with Metra Home Theater Group. I'm Brent.
I'm Adam.
And welcome aboard. What do we got today, Adam?
So we've got a pretty big conversation piece that we get a lot of phone calls about on tech support. It's our HDBaseT and other Ethernet extenders, or HDMI extenders over Ethernet. And so we
Or over category cable.
Over category cable, yes, correct. And so we wanted to go ahead and take an opportunity to kind of talk more about that, right? And kind of, talk about what it is for one, how it works kind of a thing, but also some pitfalls for when you're designing a system and how things really should be laid out.
Okay, well, let's start a little bit with the basics. And since,
oops.
Wow.
Sorry, guys.
And since I'm not having to compensate today, I have the little one.
Yep, I got the big one.
I see that.
So
tell us a little bit about what we have here.
So what we're talking about, we've got our HDBaseT. This is the CS-HDBT2, or sorry, HDBaseT P2 UKA70. And this.
Do you want the box?
Almost. I think I need to remember exactly how it's spelled out. Anyways, this is the non-HDBaseT 1080p extender.
Okay.
The HTC5 EXT SRPOE.
And we also offer a 4K version of that.
Exactly. Now these, of course, are not the HDBaseT based, and so they're a different type of transmission. Whereas these ones are HDBaseT. So
well, let's start with the basics and go up so people know what they gain with each step,
right,
instead of what they don't.
Right. So Brent, kind of what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask you a bunch of questions.
Okay.
Because I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about it, about the internals of it.
Okay.
I just know some of the downfalls and pitfalls if it's done incorrectly.
Well, go for it.
So what is it and how does it work?
Well, let's start with the basics. Obviously, in the very early days of HDMI, what we had was 2 category cables, and thank God we no longer have that.
Right.
But you've got your TMDS, high-speed video channels, and your EDID channels are all multiplexed over the same piece of category cable. And thank you for bringing this lovely orange sample.
Yeah, this is one that we actually did last video that we created during our conversation for that.
So you have the data overlaid on the different conductors. It's not one conductor's this and another's this.
Right.
So it's multiplexed over.
Right.
The advantage of that is one cable, and you've got all the feature sets. The drawback is it's not as easy to get further up into the bandwidth or distance.
Right.
So let's start with the basics, the small one here. I have it backwards and upside down,
Yes,
don't
you
I?
do. Yep.
Yes, I do. So with this one, you've got a good 1080p, and there's also, again, a 4K version of it that gives you effectively a 100-foot distance.
Okay.
The inexpensive ones do not have the buffering capability and the processing power of the HDBaseT, but they do give you similar results at shorter distances and significantly less cost. Right. That's the big plus. So with this one, again, 1080p, you've also got some basic, some IR capability. Depending on the model, it can be from the source to the display, or typically from the display backwards to the source, so that you can control the source.
Now, I wanted to kind of touch base on that as well a little bit, because with some of our HDBaseT extenders, or our just regular category extenders, the IR in these, and many of them, is 5-volt IR.
Traditional Chinese 5-volt, yes.
Yeah. Now, in most cases, if you're using these with a control system,
they don't.
They don't work, because your Control 4, Crestron, URC, RTI, they are normally using a 12-volt IR system.
Well, it's actually more than that, because when you look at these systems, what you're going to have is a voltage plus, minus, and then a signal trace. So it's a stereo mini plug.
Right.
When you look at your control system, it's just signal and ground coming out of the control system.
Right.
So the actual work is not done in here like it is in a traditional US system. It's done in the actual heads of the products, of the emitters, the blasters, and the IR receivers.
Right. So when you're designing a system for in a house or wherever you're designing it, you need to make sure to understand what it is that you're using. If you have Control 4 or Crestron or some kind of control system that's using a 12-volt IR system, then you want to make sure that you are using an extender. If you're going to be transmitting your IR over the extender connection, make sure that it has a 12-volt connection as well. That's probably one of the biggest calls that we get.
The other way to make this function is what we refer to as an optically isolated connection, which is a really fancy way of saying you stick the emitter on the IR receiver.
Yeah.
And it's actually kind of a cool idea, because there's no copper connection.
Right.
So if one of them takes a spike, the other one's protected.
Right, because all it's doing is you're just
flashing
giving
light.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but it does sound cool to say an optically isolated connection.
Yeah. So if you give us a call on tech support, you'll hear us say that to you as well. So
we like the sound of it.
Yeah. So we like to sound smart, anyways. But anyways, with that said,
is it working?
I don't know. You ask them.
So
actually,
a great way to start, guys, for cable boxes, satellite receivers, items that are going to stay in the lower resolution range, up to 100 or so feet. This really is a great way to go. It's very reliable, it's inexpensive, and it always works. It really does.
Right. And so, guys, also one thing to keep of note, as always, ask questions. Let us know what you think about it. If you have comments or if you have questions about how certain things are, ask that question now, and we'll try and get to it during the video and answer those questions.
I do want to cover something fairly obvious, but apparently it's not. When you look at the units, it says transmitter and receiver. And I swear to God, this is not a joke. It's amazing how many calls we get where this is at the AV receiver.
Yeah. So do keep in mind that you do have a transmitter and a receiver side in all of these cases.
So it goes from source to display, transmitter to receiver.
Right. So it's not reversible. You can't.
It is not reversible.
The other thing also is ARC.
Yes.
In many systems, ARC is not compatible.
Particularly in non-HDBaseT.
Right. So in those systems, we kind of have to make sure, again, just like the IR, that when you're designing the system, you make sure that if you're using ARC, which personally I don't recommend using ARC, it's really just not that great of a setup for audio.
Unless it's Sony.
Yeah, if you keep it within the same ecosystem, especially Sony. Sony, we like Sony a lot. It works that way.
Otherwise, it is incredibly complex and can be frustrating to make function on a reliable basis.
Right. So from the 1080p, if we jump up to the 4K, and I'm going to grab one here from its box. So again, this is a non-HDBaseT.
Yes,
but
1080p version.
We're doing 4K, right?
4K version. Now, you will note that as you go up, size does increase slightly because there is a lot more going on in the chassis.
So one of the questions that I had, Brent, and just for more clarification, one for myself, but also for people who are viewing, because hopefully we're all kind of covering different levels of things. The old style extenders, where you had the two category wires, what was happening on those? Can we see that?
One wire actually carried the video and audio signal, or TMDS.
Right.
The second wire was all the EDID and voltage channels.
Okay.
The chipsets that were available, there was not a unified chipset. So when you looked at our very first product, which was the HDM Cat 5, I think was the part number.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe.
It was before my time, but yeah.
It really was 2 cables.
Okay.
And you had a max distance of about 200 feet, downhill in neutral with a tailwind.
Okay.
And termination was stupid critical.
So was there anything actually happening inside of the extender at that time, or was it literally just taking
Oh, no. There was a whole lot going on.
Was there? Okay.
When you look at video and you look at category cable, this is a 100 ohm system.
Mm-hmm.
The video is still 75 ohms in HDMI.
Right.
So first off, it's not just wire to wire, although I've seen those jobs. There are some cheap ones out there that try it. They don't work. Mm-hmm. But you also can't just have balance or impedance correction. There's a lot going on just because there are 19 conductors in an HDMI terminal.
Right.
Even with 2 of these, how many wires are there?
Oh, you've got 16 at that point.
And that's still 3 short.
Right.
So you're still having to do some overlays and some changes.
Right.
And this was at the very beginning.
Right.
And it lasted for about 5 years.
So when we jumped then from there to the single category wire connection,
Yes.
now of course even at that time we still had to do quite a bit of compression.
Oh, and we still do.
Yeah. So well, even now especially because we're going from 18
Just it's
gigs.
a whole lot better compression than it was.
Right. And so when you do have that type of setup, of course, if you can run an HDMI, run an HDMI, right?
Yes. Now, when you look even at an inexpensive 1080p system, you compare this side by side with an HDMI cable.
Right.
At 1080p, there will be maybe, and this is a big maybe, marginal differences. Okay. Honestly, that's a big maybe, because these have gotten that good.
Well, that's good. I mean, at that point, especially we're doing 1080p.
Yes,
so.
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
When you work your way up to 4K,
yeah.
What is the limit to this cable?
10 gigs. Well, technically, depending on your applications for it. This is a Cat 6. Yeah, exactly. So for something like that, you're not going to be getting the full 10 gigs at that distance. So. And
the reality of it is, 90 feet downhill and neutral is really all you're going to get out of 10 gigs on the best cable.
Right.
However, when you look as you go up, for example, this is our 4K system. This is a 4K 30 extender.
Right.
Now, this will support pretty much anything you're going to see from a cable box or DirecTV or Dish Network.
Right.
Because it's still under the 10 gig barrier.
Right.
So for those applications, this is still a very effective and reliable tool.
Right.
And we like it, and it works. And again, you also get the IR capabilities.
Yeah. So,
which is a great feature.
So one of the other big phone calls that we get on the tech support side is either they're using our extenders, whether it be the 1080p, the 4K, or even the HDBaseT extender, and they give us a call and they say, well, everything was working fine for the first month, the first 6 months, and now all of a sudden it's not working. So short of it being a short, or short of it being some kind of electrical strike or something like that, what was the primary?
Well, actually, let's start with the
it?
Physical, because there's still a lot of physical.
Right.
The assumption is just because this worked day 1, it's going to work day 90, is an optimistic assumption.
Right.
Because what happens is over time, this copper wants to draw back from the terminal. Because when you do that termination, you stretch that wire a little bit. That elasticity wants to pull back over time.
Right.
So you do want to recheck the quality of your terminations. And by the way, guys, just going out and putting a meter or a tester on, a network tester on this and saying, it works, it does. That's not a tester. A tester that actually gives you valid responses is $10,000.
Yeah, and that's the continuity tester that is the one that you can pick up from Klein or whoever else.
Or even Fluke at a sub $1,000 price point.
And in that type of setup, all it's doing is it's checking for continuity. If you were to take a speaker wire, stranded wire, of course, if you were to take that wire and have
the
just
same conductors,
one strand of that wire hooked up to the continuity checker,
it's going to show continuity. Just
However,
not enough bandwidth.
If you try to send 100 watts down that connection, you'd fry that little piece of strand.
Absolutely. So, number 1 is check this.
Right.
Number 2, and we see a whole lot of this, updates.
And so
updates to any product, whether it's a cable box, DirecTV satellite receiver, streaming media device, Apple TV, gaming console. All these devices, when they do updates, there's no guarantee that the settings you created are carried forward in the next iteration. Now, sometimes they actually help us.
Right.
And we're going to go off topic slightly, but when Apple TV first started shipping the 4K units, by default, that unit wanted to be 4K 60, 10-bit, 444 color.
Which is way above 18
And what's
gigs.
the bandwidth required for that?
You're looking at no, I'm sorry, 10-bit. You're looking at, is it 24?
It's 24
It
gigabits.
is 24,
Yes,
yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
So right out of the gate, it would not even work correctly on a cable.
Right, on a standard HDMI
On a standard HDMI cable.
Correct.
Even at short distances. So with an extender, it's just not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
Apple TV, with much pressure from outside people,
One of us.
has done a firmware update that dropped it. You no longer even have the 444 option
Right.
at 4K 60.
Right.
And really, you don't even want to use 4K 60 because there's no content except for
Billy Lynn's Long
Halftime
Halftime
Walk.
Which, if you guys, it's a great video for demonstrating the 4K 60, and if you guys have a showroom and
that's
whatnot.
about it.
But honestly, it's not that great of a story. But that's another discussion
Okay,
entirely.
so 4K 30 over standard category cable and even Cat 5e 350 will work. It's when you get up into the HDR that we have to step up in both dollars, buffering, processing, and cost.
Right.
What's next up, young man?
Well, actually, I want to just reiterate one more time, guys. Go ahead and, if you have questions, please let us know. If you guys are running into things out in the field, let us know what they are, because again, we're a solutions company. We like to come up with solutions to your guys'
and we actually
problem.
like to talk to you.
Yeah, we do. It gives us, honestly, it keeps us going from day to day.
Yeah, it gets me out of the desk.
Yeah, exactly. So let us know if you have any questions about certain things. You know, if you are running into specific problems out in the field, let us know what they are. Especially right now, today, if anybody's has any comments or questions in the for the video today, definitely throw them on the chat. Let us know what you see about that, and we'll discuss them while we're on air today. So, but moving on, for what
What's
we have,
next?
we have our HDBaseT. Now this is our Mac Daddy. This is the top of the line one that we have currently.
Yes,
the
now,
UKA7.
The HDBaseT is an interesting company.
Right.
Because they don't make just one HDB, it's Valens. They don't make one chipset. They make a wide range of chipsets.
Right.
And the performance of one is not obviously identical to the performance of others.
Right.
When HDBaseT first started shipping, they said 10 gig. They did really good at 1080p.
Yeah.
And then with updates, they supported 3D.
Right.
And then with more updates, they did basic 4K under the 10 gig rules, under 1.4 architecture.
Right.
And that's 4K 30, 8-bit color, 420 or 422, or 1080p 444. And this is kind of important because you will see companies advertise HDBaseT. It says 4K, 60, HDR, comma, 444.
Yeah.
Now that 444 has nothing to do with the 4K or the 60 or the HDR. It's actually related to the 1080p.
Right.
But it does 444
Yeah.
on 1080p.
Yeah. Just not together.
Just not all the good stuff.
Yeah.
So, when you look at HDBaseT, with the changes that have happened through the years, the most recent version,
Right.
and it still says Valens and it still says HDBaseT 2.0,
Right.
because 2.0 is mostly feature sets within it. The most recent version actually goes to 13.6.5 with the compression down to 10.
Right.
Now, it's a fairly soft compression.
Yeah, you want to do some art?
Yes, I do. So we're going to take 13.6.5 down to 10 with the soft compression. So it's not an obvious change.
Okay.
And this will support 420, 10-bit HDR 4K 30.
Right.
Which, honestly, is the vast majority of what we do. Gaming, however, can push that.
Right.
Now, with gaming, you actually need to go to 18. Now, there are a variety of companies that make different compression schemes to work in conjunction with
HDBaseT.
the Valens. So what you'll have is a two-step process that takes it from 18 down to slightly below 13.6.5.
Right.
And then the Valens kicks in.
Okay.
So where this gets intriguing is, and pretty much everybody now has something to do this, including us.
Right.
But what that means is, just because it says it's HDBaseT and because it supports the bandwidth, does not mean the picture is always the same.
Okay.
So you can have different systems with different picture quality levels, even though the specs are the same on the box.
You did your research last night.
Well, this morning.
Yeah. So.
But the advantage of this, and branding does make a difference.
Right.
One of the things in our case, let's be honest, because we have been with HDMI since day one, building the most reliable, consistent performing products has been our goal.
Right.
So we work very, very closely with manufacturers to get the best possible compression schemes, the best possible power supplies, because we want these things to work day in and day out forever.
Right.
Let's face it, I love the phone calls, solving other people's problems. I don't like them when they're mine.
Yeah. So
we try to avoid that.
So again, when we're talking about HDBaseT or the non-HDBaseT extenders, one of the biggest downfalls that I get on the phone calls is that they're running it from, let's say, the basement where the rack system is,
yes, sir,
up to the next floor up, but they're not going in any other direction. They're just going straight up, which usually in a standard house, you're only going at most maybe 20 feet. In a system like that.
Yeah, and that can be an interesting situation.
So it almost seems like that the shorter runs can actually almost be worse than some of the longer runs.
And here's why, and as you know from me, because I speak very loudly, I am not a quiet individual.
Right.
So if you and Stuart and I are having a conversation together, Stuart's talking, and I join in, you step back.
Right.
Because I am so much more voluminous with my speech than Stuart is, and it tends to overload you. The same thing happens here. These things are fairly loud out of the gate to make the distance in the wire. They have to be, because they have to go a long way.
And they're designed for that. They're designed for the purpose of going longer distances.
So the short of the long of it is if you have to run a short distance, do a very loose and large coil, at the source side. Would you grab the wire over there a second?
Yep. And again, that's if you absolutely have to.
Yes, if you can, 50 foot's the short side.
Yeah, if you can get away with doing just an HDMI cable.
Maybe, but really 50 foot is the distance. If you're much shorter than that, HDBaseT is going to be a problem. And at that point, these, honestly,
are also going to be a big problem.
Are going to be an issue. 25, 30 feet's the short side of these for the same reason.
Right, exactly. So. With that, guys, we are starting to run out of time.
Now,
Brent, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yes, I do. Let's talk real quick about IR, because lots of guys are tying into control systems.
Right.
When you move up into HDBaseT or better products, it is, in fact, standard Xantech, Crestron, Control 4, Niles, RTI, URC compatible connections. Now, when you look at the IR input, there's an in and an out.
Right.
Is the in the stereo or the mono?
It is the, no, I'm sorry, it is the stereo.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So if you're going to tie the input into your control system, what do you use?
You use well, you can use our part, the CSIRCC.
And what does that do?
It takes it floats the ground, essentially.
Yes, well, it floats the power, not the ground.
The power, pardon me, yes.
So you have a mono plug going into your control system and a stereo plug going into this.
Right.
I took a call last night.
Right.
Guy needed to control a motorized screen off a projector without a 12-volt trigger.
Right.
But he couldn't get a control wire where he wanted to. So I said, here's what you're going to do. You've already got a wire to the projector, right?
Right.
He said, yes. And you've got a Cat5 for the HDBaseT to the projector, right? Yes. Okay, so you're going to use our extender that has the IR capability built into it.
Right.
And I actually looked up the part number for him.
There you go.
Because I couldn't remember it. You're going to use the IRCC coming out of your RTI control system, stereo mono into the input here, the stereo plug into the input here, the mono plug into the output of your RTI.
Right.
At the projector, you're going to use our IR Kit CCUS, mono plug on this one and stereo into that, and tie that into your screen for the relays.
Right.
And it works perfectly.
Yep.
So guys know that these are in stock. They are really inexpensive.
Definitely lifesaver. You don't have to go in there and start making your own cuts
and don't
or anything
cut wires.
on it. Yeah.
Don't cut wires. Did I say?
Don't cut wires.
Don't cut wires.
Yeah.
Respect the wire.
Yep. Respect the wire.
Respect the wire.
So guys, again, thank you so much for checking in on us today.
Any more questions? You can always call me direct at 386-846-7264 from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week.
Or you can call us at our tech support line, 386-255-0234. Or if you have more questions, feel free to go ahead and drop it into the comment section of this video. We always go back and check over things again, so we're happy to go ahead and chat with you there if you have any other questions, or give us a call. So,
and unboxing with the boys next week will be
on this piece here, the HDBaseT, the CS HDbitT to UKA70. Pardon me. That's a mouthful sometimes. So definitely check us out for that, guys. We'll see you next
That'll
week
be
for
up
that.
next Wednesday.
Yep,
and
next Wednesday.
Thank you again for watching. I'm Brent.
I'm Adam.
Have a wonderful day.
We'll see you next time.